Committee meeting from December 5th to order. We have one remote participant, so I have to do the roll call to start us off. So, Chuck?
Here.
Carla?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Sarah?
Here.
Sean? It would help, Sean, if I had unmuted myself before I started calling us to order. Thank you. There you go. Sean here. Okay, so walking through the agenda first, and before I do that, just I might get up in the middle of the meeting and walk around just because I'm dealing with a pinched nerve. Please don't take any offense to that at all. Just sometimes you got to move. So I'm going to walk through the agenda real quick and then we'll dive in. So first things first is we'll have public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. Anybody want to speak on that? They're welcome to. We're going to focus on excellence, and we're represented here with the track team. Cross-country team, and the state championship, right? So thank you for that. And then we have our consent agenda that we'll dive through. Move on from there to reports, multiple reports. We'll then move to new business, which includes the high school professional development update, the Q1 FY25 financial update. We will start our discussions on the FY26 school committee budgets. Budget priorities, and then we will adjourn to executive session, not to return to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, our central office and principals, administration across the board. Okay, so with that said, does anybody here from the public have a public comment? All right, seeing none, let's move on. Our focus on excellence. Dr. Milczewski, would you like to introduce?
Absolutely. So we're
Charlie
thrilled.
and the rest of the team?
Yeah, we're thrilled here to be joined by the boys cross country team, who, as the community knows, was recent state champions, first state championship for the team since 1974, which is incredible. Also joined by Coach Conley, who's here with us, and also Coach Mike McSweeney, who's not here with us as well. Just a couple things I'd like to share about the team. First, team, if you look at the results online, had a score of 70, which the next closest team, I think, was Oliver Ames at 106. Just the gap was incredible, just absolutely shattered the competition at the championship meet. And something when you ask members of the community about this team, not only just attain the highest level of athletic excellence, but also if you see and you hear from them, student athletes who constantly hold themselves to a high bar academically, and also student athletes who constantly are the consummate role models and peers in the community too, and a team that we constantly look at for being, examples in our community too. So just like to thank, obviously, and congratulate the team on the level of athletic excellence, but also for all of the other things that you do for our community as well. We'd like to invite the team up. We know we're going to hear from Coach Connolly first, and then also he's going to turn over to some of his players and student athletes are going to be able to share a little bit about their season. So come on up to these mics if you don't mind. That way the TV can pick you up and everyone at home can hear you as well.
Circle around your student advisory committee members over here. Can't see them over there, Carla.
Huh?
Guys here.
You just have to talk into both mics. We'll put all of them here. So they can hear.
Great. We good? So yeah, first off, thank you for the invite. We're certainly privileged to be here. I've always been extremely proud to coach the cross-country team, and this year we really had a special season, as you know, to be state champions for the first time in 50 years. And to do that, the student athletes standing behind me and many other student athletes and those that were involved, as anyone that's ever tried to run, a few miles or get out there and do some jogging and do some running or to race and try to go faster and faster, I think you know just how difficult this sport is, and it just takes an enormous amount of discipline, determination, mental toughness. It's a big mental part of this sport. And these, student athletes behind me and those that were on this team just rose to the occasion and just really overcame a lot of, adversity throughout the season. We had some injuries. We had some guys starting the season off that had to do some alternative workouts, pool workouts, and we kind of overcame a lot. And with our ultimate goal that we knew we could be at our best at the end, and they rose to the occasion and exceeded expectations. And they really worked hard. So it's a very challenging sport, and They put a lot of time in, and as I've kind of told them and kind of told in a few different opportunities I had to speak about the season in the championship and how it came together, is to reach this kind of pinnacle of the sport and to achieve something like a state championship. It's really not done the day of the event, as we all know. It really takes dedication, hard work, commitment, sacrifices that go back really weeks, months, in a lot of cases for some of these guys, some of these seniors and juniors that have been on the team for 3 or 4 seasons, years to kind of prepare, to give yourself that opportunity. And I was just so proud that they, did those things. And it takes an enormous amount of really self-motivation and leadership from the seniors and from the captains. It really starts with them. Because, a lot of this has to start in June and in months before when I'm not seeing them. And the captains and the leaders really set the tone, and that they came in with this type of goal in mind, but it took a lot of work and a lot of effort to get there and a lot of challenges that we overcame. So that was what made me as a coach to kind of watch that and observe that and see their leadership and see how hard they worked and see it really come together. That was sort of an historical run, championship run over the span of a few weeks. So they got it right at the right times, and things came together. And on that day, which happened to be, believe it or not, and I credit Coach McSweeney, who did the research in the Reading Public Library, it was 50 years to the actual day of November 9th. So 50 years, 1974, November 9th was the last state championship, and it just so happened the event and the day fell on November 9th this year. So maybe it was meant to be. But they stepped up that day. It was an extremely challenging course. So to me, I was feeling confident because I believe in the leaders that we had and the runners that we had and all of our preparation for the months before. I believed that we could do it. But the big sort of variable out there was the course. It was an extremely challenging course that you really have no way to train for or prepare for how your body's going to react to it when you get into start racing a 3.1 mile race on a course that the first mile, as these guys can tell you, was like a mountain. I almost would sort of prepare it to like you're climbing like you're on like a ski resort and you're climbing the mountain on a ski resort, and that's what that first mile felt like. And they reacted well, and they executed the race strategy we talked about to perfection, and they just marched up and moved up that entire race, which was awesome to see. And as we talked about earlier, to score 70 points and to do it with that much of a kind of resounding victory I couldn't be more proud of them. But a lot of things have to come together to get over that hump. We've been close a few years in the past. We were second last year. In the top 5 really the last 3 or 4 years. And I was just proud that this group, which was a really special group that had great leadership, great work ethic, they cared about each other, they were a team. So cross country is a team sport. I talk about that all the time. And they really cared about the team's goals and helping each other and supporting one another. And that's what it takes to kind of get over the top. And I was so proud to watch them. Couldn't be a nicer group of athletes. And as the superintendent said earlier, they really are, in my opinion, the role models of just the student athletes of the school. There's not a lot of noise around the sport, and we understand that. A lot of the traditional team sports that are happening inside stadiums and inside fields, where it's easier to kind of watch and spectate. But these athletes deserve just as much of the attention and the accolades, and they earned that this year by all of their hard work and their commitment that they put in. And it's just an extremely challenging sport. And they did it, and they were tested every step of the way by having to do it on a very challenging course. The hardest course in New England is the Northfield Mountain Course, as they call it. So they overcame all obstacles, all challenges, and they earned every step, every bit of it. And I know they're going to remember it for the rest of their lives and grow from it. And I'm extremely proud of them. So I said a lot. I'm going to turn it over to them. We have a couple of our captains here today. One of our captains, Jack Filipski, is actually at hockey tryouts, so he's not here today. But here we have Roy O'Neill, who's been a captain, member of the team for 4 years. Chris Barbato, who's been a captain this season and just had an awesome season. Chris Barbato actually also set the school record this year running 15:06 in the 5K, 3.1 miles, so that's just an extremely blazing time. So we have senior Andrew McCarthy, sophomore Finn Johnson-Houlihan, we have Cam Gigler, and Curran Healy, who was a freshman who was on the varsity, which had an awesome season as well. So captains want to speak over?
I mean, my name's Rory. I'm one of the tri-captains. I mean, it really was a long season. We worked hard every day. I mean, definitely some ups and downs. We had a tough loss to Belmont that really kind of messed with us. We thought that was kind of it, but we kind of bounced back from that. We ended up beating Lexington, which is a huge win for us. At the Middlesex League meet, we got second, which is we were really happy about that. In the state meet, it was kind of the final chance for us to show them what we got, and we did that. And our goal for the meet was just get our top 7 people across the finish line as fast as we could. It's all about pack running, which we really did execute that day. I mean, it really was something special.
Hi, I'm Chris Barbado. I'm also one of the tri-captains. With this season, or going into the season, I think we knew we were more than capable of definitely being in the picture for a state championship, given that we placed second the year prior. Obviously, I mean, last year we had 4 seniors in that group that graduated, so we definitely needed a few runners to step up, and they definitely did. But I think between just all of the work that we did over the season, we had up to 40-mile weeks of work, in between showing up every day and just doing what we were supposed to do. I think we just we made it happen where it needed to happen. And there were a lot of emotions on the day when we won the state championship, because a lot of us have been putting the work in since June and years prior in cross country and track. So being able to come home with the state title was definitely really awesome and a cool way to go out.
My name's Andrew McCarthy. I'm also one of the seniors on the team. I'm not, however, a captain, but they talked a lot about how much hard work the team put in, and I think that a lot of that came from starting in summer training, which I think made a big difference for our team, because we started early and even before school had started, and I think the team environment that we created during those summer practices and all that before school started was really what made the difference in feeling like a team and running like a team. So, I mean, I did not expect this result, but I think it was a really good senior year for me and hopefully for everyone else.
Totally optional.
I mean, well, I just want to say none of this would have been possible without Coach Conley, Coach Crosby, Coach McSweeney, and Coach Julia. I think the best coaching staff in the state. They truly put in so many hours every single week for us.
We have one tradition that we're going to hold you to, which is when you come for a Focus on Excellence, you come down here and we take a picture with you. So let's do it. Group up, and parents can take pictures if they want to. I need you to stand up. I've been to a doctor, Anna Carter, waiting for an MRI. Scoot.
All right, say champs. Cheers. Thank you.
This isn't the same kid.
It's all that soccer, Tom. I think soccer should be
Congratulations, awesome work.
We'll do our part.
Thank you.
I did the 5K thing. It was like a zombie running program.
Okay.
It was great. Like, as soon as you're supposed to jog, and then you're supposed to sprint with the zombies or anything. And then as soon as the zombies would have stuck.
Oh my gosh.
Lions had a good season last year. Very good season.
And I ran like 1 after 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That was it, after that.
1506.
I can run 1 mile about like maybe.
all right, let's move
Being honest,
forward.
it's probably more like 16 or 17 minutes.
Keep our way down the agenda as we go.
Not even if somebody was chasing.
And do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Seconded by Chuck. Any comments or notes? Dr. Milchewski?
I can just share one thing quickly. You'll see in there information about the Metco REI, which is the grant, which is the racial equity, racial integration and equity grant. Just want to flag that you'll see the potential partnership with Ignite Reading. If you follow the Globe, you'll see that there was recently a front page story about Ignite Reading's partnership with Chelsea Public Schools and the impact that had on their first grade students. For those who didn't read that, it's, in long story short, it's a program, intervention program targeted for first grade students to ensure that, based on foundational reading skills, to ensure that every student is reading on grade level by the end of first grade. If you're interested in learning more, obviously you can check out their website. They've also was a research study that was released today about the impact of the program. We are exploring that program with that grant for all of our first and second grade students who are currently not on grade level, need a little additional boost, which is 15 minutes of online live tutoring every day too. So that would be a part of the grant funds, but wanted to just give the community a heads up on that potential partnership. I think we're really excited because, as we've talked about before, we need to think thoughtfully and strategically about closing gaps, particularly gaps that we know have existed for a long time. And we think that this could be a way or a strategy for us to be able to do that. So we'll loop back as any more formal partnerships are kind of brought forward, but excited about kind of exploring that over the next couple of weeks.
Great,
Excellent.
thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? No? Okay, roll call vote. Chuck? Yes. Carla? Yes. Aaron?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sean? Yes. Tom? Yes, and it passes 6-0. Okay, so we will now move down to our reports, and we'll start with our Director of Finance and Operations, Phil.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say I am paddling my feet as fast as I can, trying to keep up with things, having started a little bit late in terms of the budget process. I did want to thank everyone in the central office and the principals and everyone else who have been very helpful to me, especially Kate Finnegan, the assistant business manager, putting up with my questions and my constantly asking why. And we're moving forward from there. And I have had I have attended a couple of meetings of the DLT and the administrative staff and gave my quick 5-minute presentation on who I am, my philosophy, purchasing, and budgeting, which, I like to call it my award-winning presentation, but it's always a challenge to keep the audience awake during that.
Thank you, Phil. I'll say I like hearing that you're asking why. Why is always a question that people need to not be afraid to answer, and it can't be just because this is how we do it. It has to be because it's the right thing to do, and here's why it's the right thing to do. So, thank you for that. Okay, Dr. Milchewski.
I hear a lot of whys at home from my kids, and now I get a lot more whys from Phil, so it's very well received. I just had one quick, Laura O'Neill was just here and asked if I'd give an additional plug to it. I'm happy to do that for an annual community favorite, which is the Festival of the Trees, which everyone knows is Saturday and Sunday at Parker Middle School. So obviously, if more information's out there, but would love to get as much community involvement. There are some really exciting trees, and I have to say the one I am most excited about initially is there is a Killam School building tree, which you've heard about, which I think is really exciting, and actually implement some of the pieces that are integral to the project and some of the design pieces of the project, which I think is really creative and innovative. Also, before the Festival of the Trees on this weekend, on Saturday, is also the annual Metco Brunch. So if you don't know anything about that and you're interested, let me know, or find more information online, sponsored by the Friends of Reading Metco. We already have close to 100 people who will be attending, and it's a wonderful event and community builder.
Okay, great. Let's move on to liaison and subcommittee, but let's start with the students to see if there's a student report.
Okay, so prior to the Thanksgiving break, students and staff participated in Homecoming Week. This included the Homecoming Dance, Dodgeball Tournament, Pep Rally, Walk It Like You Rocket 5K, the Sunday Night Lights football game, Unity Day, and the Thanksgiving football game at Fenway, which was a huge success. Many of these events were fundraisers for the senior class to support upcoming events like prom and other senior activities. Also, the newsletter has action photos with these events, and students and staff had a wonderful time during homecoming. Thank you to all who helped make this a reality, like Ms. Clausen, Ms. Greenbaum, and PTO, Ms. Buckley too, and the administrative team, all the staff that volunteered to chaperone. Also, the Innovation Career Pathway students in the Healthcare and Social Assistance Pathway went to Medford and talked with the Medford Public Health Office on a field trip. They met and learned about jobs facing public health issues. So that was a cool opportunity for them.
Great, thank you.
In addition, this week, 40-plus RMHS business students attended a business immersion field trip to the Manning School of Business at UMass Lowell. The students there had the opportunity to engage in interactive and fun business activities and also tour the business school and get kind of an in-depth look into the business college experience. The student body wants to extend a huge thank you to the business department and to Mr. Kruper-Shayer for planning and attending this field trip with them. Winter athletics also have started this week, starting on December 2nd. All the tryouts for sports are happening now, like track, hockey, wrestling, you name it. So we just want to wish luck to all the athletes competing and trying out in their first few games and scrimmages. And then finally, today during Flex, Mr. Cabanas, one of our science teachers here at RMHS, launched a series of talks centered around STEM. First one today was on nuclear physics, I believe. I didn't attend it. I thought it sounded interesting. I had another commitment I had to go to, but there's going to be a chain of these talks centered around STEM throughout the year, and that's something we're hoping we can get a lot of student enthusiasm behind in the coming months.
Makes sense. Okay, any questions for Sebastian or Alex?
Thanks for being here.
Mike's back so that she and Chuck can actually be heard. And we'll start with Chuck.
So, just a couple quick things. Recreation met, definitely since our last meeting. I can't remember the day. Not a lot. It was a light agenda meeting, but no real school-related. Charter review was supposed to meet, but we canceled so we could go to the football game, and we're rescheduled for next week. Right. That's it for me.
Okay. Carla?
I'll give a quick update on Killam. On Monday, we are going to have a Killam open house for the neighbors, where we're trying to get people together and make sure they're informed about what's happening. We're going to have snacks and a quick presentation. Our next school building committee meeting will be on the 16th. We will be talking about sustainability there. We did not make a decision on our HVAC system last meeting because we didn't have all the information, so we pushed it off to this one. We will have a community meeting and talk about sustainability on January 15th. We've been meeting with RMLD about solar, and there's just a lot going on.
Okay.
I was also going to mention the Festival of Trees, so thank you, Tom, for mentioning it. And thank you to REF for doing a concierge tree on behalf of the overextended school committee, but we're very happy to support them. And just a reminder that the annual menorah lighting is Sunday night at 5 o'clock on the town common, and everyone is welcome to attend.
Great. Sarah?
The coalition board met, nothing school-specific really on the agenda, other than some great updates they provided around how they're supporting some of the health classes here at the high school, around substance abuse and mental health first aid. So that was exciting to hear. They're just really excited about it and the work they're doing. So that was really fun. Community plugs, we talked Festival Trees, community menorah on the community, and then following at, which church is it? I can't remember the top clock tower.
Old
church.
Old South.
Old
Yes,
South.
Sure. With refreshments and stuff following that. The Dickens Fair is Saturday, the 14th, which is a fundraiser. This is only the second year we've been doing it since post-COVID. It was an annual tradition. It's a drama club fundraiser, but we basically turn Main Street into Dickensian London. There's caroling, but it's a lot of vendors and craft folks come out and have awesome things to buy your parents for Christmas and your grandparents and other things that you might need. And then also happening this coming weekend and the following, the Select Choir is doing their caroling again, so around town. So if you don't know of an event that's happening, ask any of your friends and neighbors if they're hosting it or know of any, because it's really, really fun. And I always do my Buddy the Elf plug, best way to spread holiday cheer, singing loud for all to hear. So get out and support them and listen to them.
Buddy the Elf, you're gonna mix that in.
I am, of course, my favorite. It's the best holiday movie.
All right, Sean, any updates from you?
I can't follow that, so I have no report.
Mic drop.
All right, I just have one quick update. At our last meeting, we were talking about the ACE committee and whether or not we could represent ourselves or not and whatnot. And we decided that we are going to have a delegate. So I interviewed a candidate by the name of Ryan Johnstone, really, really great conversation with him. And I'm going to appoint him as our delegate for this. He's got a lot of interesting legal background, has very interesting familial background with public policy and how the 50s, 60s, and 70s shaped certain things that I think is going to be very strong contribution to that committee, and some good ideas about how to kind of loop in the family when the time comes as things work their way through that process. So I'm going to nominate him as our delegate, and then we are also responsible to nominate a student delegate, and I had a wonderful conversation with London Stith Nichols, and she was phenomenal. Also, for a ninth grader, incredibly well thought, and really polished, really well put together, so I nominated her for the student position as well. So
Awesome.
that should close out our nominations, okay? That closes out that portion of the agenda, and I can't use portions of my finger. I'll switch over to the next portion of the agenda. So we'll start with the new business of the high school professional development. And before I do that, gentlemen, Sebastian, you haven't been here before. Alex, you have. So you're welcome to stay as long as you want or leave as soon as you want, right? No pressure either way. We will need to make space for Ms. Callahan though. So if you slide down, if you want to stay, please do so she can get on the camera view and all the necessary related. Good job, guys.
Yep.
Thanks for advocating.
Bye,
guys. Night.
Man, now it looks like we kicked you out.
You're free. You're free.
Okay, so start us off. I don't think I have a presentation to share. Do you have it over there?
Do we have it, let's see,
It was in the packet.
I can share out of the packet if that's easier.
is that the easiest way?
Let me get to the packet and then I'll share from there. And you can do the whole like magic fingers thing.
What do you mean by that?
You just
Indicate when you want them to move, advance.
Don't like
Yeah.
it.
I was gonna say it's page 34.
Yeah.
Is it easy, or do you want us to pull it up on the computer, whatever's probably quicker just to do the packet, right?
I'm almost there, yeah.
Okay.
Full screen mode. Okay, so there's that. Now go back over here. And why is the host going to not share the screen? They changed the Zoom interface. There it is, the big green button at the bottom, that helpful. Okay, well, we should be good. All right, there it is.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jess Callahan, the high school principal, and with me tonight is Katie Buckley. She is assistant principal, but also the director of academic achievement. So she and I work very closely in developing our professional learning plan for the entire school. And so if there's something I can answer, she definitely has my back. We can go to the next slide, Mr. Wise. So as any good lesson plan, this is the objectives of what we're trying to cover today. One is to give a high-level overview of our professional learning plan at the high school. I know there's been a lot of presentations from the elementary schools specifically about their work, and I am happy to take this opportunity to talk about all the work that we are also committed to and carrying out at the high school. I want to thank the committee for their support in the creation of the department heads. I know, and the department heads as instructional leaders at the high school, I know that you have supported that as a committee, and they are really working hard to serve as instructional leaders. And as throughout my presentation, you'll see all of the things that they're doing to develop and carry out professional learning for their departments that's within the scope of their curriculum. And some are also volunteering to also be part of the other things that are called our PD tracks, which I'll get to in a second. And so I just want to thank you for your support of that and also emphasize that they are an integral part of what we're doing. And then third is to outline the different types of professional learning that our staff are engaged in. And when I say staff, that includes the administrative team, it includes our para educators, it includes all of our teachers and counselors as well. We can flip to the next slide, please. So I think it begs the question, why do we care about adult learning, and how is it different than student learning? And so it is grounded in a theory or an author known as Malcolm Knowles, who talks about how adults learn that and how it's different from students. And basically, we need it has to be connected to what we're doing. Where adults are self-motivated in a lot of ways, especially if it's something that we're interested in, engaged in. And so when we're planning out our training and learning at the high school for our adults, we take that into consideration. Obviously, everything we're doing is also aligned with our strategic plan and the school improvement plan as well. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. And so really our professional learning is a three-pronged approach. And so we don't have an enormous amount of time at the high school to conduct professional learning, but what I do in the spring prior to the start of the school year is come together with my department heads, and Dr. Hardy, as well as the administrative team, and we plan out all of the hours that we have and what's taking place during those hours. And as we go through all of our training, whether it's departmental training or our early release days on Fridays, the departmental trainings on Wednesdays, pretty much twice a month for an hour after school, that we capitalize on using all of that time. And so it really is a three-pronged approach where departments are planning out that time on Wednesdays, which you'll see an example of in a minute, and that is very focused on their curriculum specifically. Then we have a targeted professional learning, which is usually external professional development that teachers request to participate in that we then approve, and I'll give some examples later. And the third part is a cross-curricular professional learning where people volunteer to participate in what we call professional development tracks, and they get to work with people from across the school on areas of interest that they think that's going to push forward their practice as educators. Next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to go through each of those quickly. I do have questions at the end, obviously, but if you interrupt me if you feel like if I leave something out. So the first portion is, like I said, happens about every other Wednesdays. The department heads plan it out in the spring before we come together and have a little, I call it a retreat. It's upstairs in the DLR, so I don't know how much of a true retreat it is, but we take about a half a day and really plan out the work that we want to do the following year. Everybody has an objective and a goal, and then everything that we're doing aligns to that, but it's specific to each department. And so this also obviously ties back to the tenets that I talked about of the author, the theory on adult learning that I referenced before with Mr. Knowles.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
And also, we cover what we're going to talk about in those department meetings and collaborate in the instructional leadership team, which meets once a week that Jess leads.
Yep. And so, well, I already covered that. We can go to the next slide. So these are just some example, I'm not going to read them to everyone, but these are example departmental goals that are developed. And so the department leader will develop these goals, they're implementing them, and then typically their entire department will also adopt that goal as part of the evaluative process for their professional learning goals. And so this is just an example of this year of our world language goal. The second one says social studies, but I actually believe that it's math. It's a typo, where they're doing a guaranteed learning experiences, and Mr. Krupa-Shayer, who is the new math department head, gives these and practices these examples with his department members in their department meetings, and they then carry them out with their students. And so he's modeling that best practice. And the last one is science, and that one, it's very wordy, but also is layered in with the work that the science team did last year as part of the curriculum review process with Dr. Hardy. slide.
Jess, can you go back to that slide for 1 second? I just want to emphasize one point too about like the shift that the committee helped drive years ago in the contract was shifting the roles of the department heads from purely like a department manager to department manager plus also driving learning. And I think if you read some of those descriptions, you can see sort of that shift and how those department heads are now responsible for instructionally related items that are going to improve teaching and learning within their department. So I just wanted to again thank the committee for their work in that, and hopefully you see that reflected in this.
And they really own that too, Dr. Malachewski, in that they're part of the evaluative process. They're pushing into classrooms. We are working together. Each department head works with an administrator as a primary and secondary evaluator of every single person in their department. And we're authentically providing feedback. We align how we're giving feedback to teachers and make sure that we consistently coach them throughout the year. Some teachers are newer, they might need more support. Some might be taking on new courses, they might need more support as well. Some are master teachers that we can use as models for everyone in the school. So
It's a really good point. I'm glad you raised that too, because it's one thing to like lead the learning, but then there's also the next step of, monitoring progress, assessing, being able to make adjustments, and a step further, hold accountable through evaluation, I think is something that shift in the contract was really important.
yeah, thank you. Okay, next slide. So this is just an example of what each department designs when we do that work the spring prior. And so I have spreadsheets for every single department after or before their meetings are happening. Their agendas are linked here. We check to make sure the agendas are aligned with their goal that they had at the start of the school year. These are submitted to Dr. Hardy at the end of the year, so everyone's hours are tallied for professional development licensure purposes to move their work forward. So it is a very thoughtful plan, and we try to make sure we're really pushing our staff. And again, we're still right in the content. We're only looking at their specific content, but we try to also give people that opportunity when I get into the PD tracks to kind of expand what they're doing and be creative and innovative as well. Next slide. So the main thing I want to highlight on this slide is that some of this work obviously happens in the summer. Some of this work also happens in the summer, just to be more articulate. And that is predominantly focused on curricular development, people working in teams, because we don't have the luxury at the high school of having a lot of common planning time, and our teachers are really taking advantage of this and doing this work. A lot of it is around our new dual enrollment classes that they're co-planning, sometimes planning by themselves or sometimes co-planning with the professor from whatever institution that we're partnering with. Our innovation career pathways classes, some of which are new, and so we're using that time in the summer and funding to pay for those hours, the teachers to get together. We have several new advanced placement courses that we're implementing, and we send the teachers to that advanced placement training to be certified, and learn that content as well. Examples, psychology, which will be starting next year, and economics, which will be starting next year.
Perfect tie-in from our previous meeting.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. I mentioned this briefly already, but targeted professional learning, we do what we can within the confines of our budget here at the high school, and I think we do a great job making sure we meet the needs of teachers professionally and all of our staff professionally, but sometimes there's other training that teachers need to receive that's very focused in their field, and or gives them opportunities to partner and network with people in the field that are on the cutting edge of new theories, new teaching, new ideas. And so, some examples of that are curriculum councils, which that is still happening within, within our RMHS with Dr. Hardy, but also sending teachers the college board training, which we have done and do every year to make sure that they're up to speed. MathLA, which we just recently sent a whole bunch of our world language teachers to the MathLA conference, which is very valuable. It's hard because you can't have your entire language department out at the same time. So they worked to come up with schedules where one went one day, one went the other day, but came back saying like they just took so much from the sessions that they were able to attend. There's also MathSol and things like that we take advantage of, METCO conferences, which we had 2 people out on today at the MDA conference. Go to the next one, Mr. Wise. I almost called you Dr. Wise.
Haven't heard that one yet. No.
One more, I don't know.
I think you
I
missed
skipped
one. Yeah. Just one additional part is the helpful collaboration that happens. Like, we offer so many different classes over so many different courses, and it really helps to have like somebody who's teaching like digital marketing management, for example, to meet with other people in different schools that are teaching similar things. So that's like another reason why it's really helpful to have this targeted professional learning.
Can you go back one, Mr. Rice, sorry. No, are these other
It's
ordinance?
before, yeah, so that one, it's okay.
All right. No, forward.
I don't know why it keeps it there. That's where we should be.
Yeah, it's okay. I can go with this. My formatting looks different on mine for some reason, but I got it. And so cross-curricular PD tracks is one of the 3 prongs of training that we're doing with our staff. So I think that I'm kind of going to go through a who, what, when, why, and how we came up with this, and what does it look like, and when does it happen. So this happens on our Friday early release days. Ms. Buckley actually kind of surveys the staff about different interests that staff have and who might be willing to lead different professional development tracks during the school year, because it takes a lot of planning to carry this out. I'll talk a little bit about one that I led last year with Mr. McSweeney, but it can be anyone. Teachers teach it, lead them, administrators, counselors, it varies. And these are topics that teachers feel are important, pressing issues that are happening in our classrooms, or needs of our students that are in front of us, or tied to our accountability data, or new pedagogical theories or practices that are out there that people want to try. And every single person, like I said, in the school is participating in this, to include like our paraeducators, our administrators, teachers, counselors are all in this together. And how is this approved? It is approved by me. The topics are approved by me. Ms. Buckley reviews the plans before they go out every Friday when we have the early release days, but everything also goes to Dr. Hardy, and she approves these professional learning plans before they're implemented as well. And so there's a lot of oversight, but we also want people to be able to, have some creativity as they're implementing these as well. Okay, now next slide. So these are some examples of professional development tracks that we've had over the last 2 years, and the different topics of what we've covered. The one that I did last year with Mr. McSweeney was small group learning walks, and we linked that with an anchor text called Deeper Learning, which I'll show more specifically what that is in the next slide. Grading for equity was another one. You'll see it again in 2024 and 25, and I can explain why we've seen that twice. Ready for Rigor was one that Ms. Buckley led the year prior, and then had a second tier of it the following year: strategies for literacy, self-reflection, and assessment. And then this school year, you can see that some have renewed, some are continuing, and then there are new topics out there as well. So trauma-informed practices, neurodivergent learners, differentiating instruction, which is always something we can always be better at. And Keys to Literacy, which is new, being led by one of our reading instructors. Exploring AI, which is highly interesting and also pressing for what's going on in the world with artificial intelligence. Modern Classroom is also one of the pieces. I did not continue doing the small group learning walks one this year, just because I just didn't feel like I had the capacity to do it again, but there was a lot of interest in that. I do want to just touch upon Modern Classroom, because I know that there has been some discussion about that in the community and with the committee as well. It is but one of the PD tracks that we're doing this year. I think there are 14 teachers that are participating in it. They're doing 1 to 2 classes. A few of them are doing 3 classes of this. They were trained in the summer, and then they are trained throughout the year. Ms. Buckley and Dr. Hardy are also part of a coaching cohort with Modern Classroom as well. They are surveying students consistently to get feedback. The surveys have been positive, I will say. I think that I've met with the teachers about, the stressors and the successes of Modern Classroom. And they do feel like it is harder for students because it is very, very student-centered, and they're asking students to articulate and demonstrate and show their learning. And so teacher-centered is, I stand in front of the class and give you a lesson, sort of like I'm doing now, which is not good teaching. And then I assess you, and with the grade you get is the grade you get, and we move on to the new content. This uses a myriad of tools that the students work on, and then they come to the classroom and the teacher asks them to demonstrate their learning either in small groups or individually, can actually use different structured seating to move the kids from space to space, not all the time, but depending upon how they're demonstrating their mastery of the content. What the teachers have said is it is a little uncomfortable sometimes for students because they are being asked to be very articulate about what they know and what they don't know. And if they haven't demonstrated mastery, they don't move on to the next subject yet. And so it is a lot of responsibility and onus on the students, but it's also pushing them to really develop their executive functioning skills, which is something that our students definitely need as they progress through high school and after high school as well. And so I know there are probably questions about that, but I just kind of want to touch upon it a little bit. It is not something that we're adopting as a whole school right now. Like all of the professional development tracks, people are trying these elements, taking what works the best. And then in March or April, we come together as a staff and people present the findings and data and information from their professional development tracks to the staff to determine what we learned, what is useful, do we want to continue this for next year, do new people want to join in this cohort and training or not, which is why you see some things continued and some things didn't. It's not always of teacher interest, sometimes it's those of us that are leading it, whether we have the capacity to continue doing it. Is there anything you want to add, Ms. Buckley?
No, you
No?
did a great job.
Okay, thank you very much. She's also my always positive cheerleader, so I love that. Do you want to move on to the next slide, or people have any questions?
Anybody want to stop here? Or do you
We
want
can stop here, because I just have a question, because I know, so we also know there's been some like negative questions raised around, we've had a lot of conversations around it, but we may, like, what would you say maybe to to families who are saying like, well, my experience isn't what you outlined there, how are you navigating that, kind of what data are you looking at, and maybe what adjustments would you make, or how would you support those classrooms as well?
I would say that, teachers are all at different points in their journey as educators, and some teachers are in need of more support, and that is being highlighted through some of the different strategies that we're using. And when that emerges, we respond by coaching those teachers and pushing into their classrooms, giving them feedback that's very action-oriented for them to correct course and bring things back around. They're also meeting every time we have an early release to talk about what's happening in their classrooms and better their practice. They are not perfect at it. Nobody that's doing these practices are yet, but we're asking our students to be creative and innovative and push the boundaries. I also need to ask my teachers to do that and continue to be energized about their jobs and to be on the cutting edge of the pedagogy and the theories that we can do as educators. I want them to continue to want to be educators. And you can't do the same thing every day and every year and still keep that same enthusiasm. And so is everything going to be perfect and work the first time? Absolutely not. But should we be trying new methods and trying to push our students to be better and be the best they possibly can be? Absolutely. And so that is, I know that requires an asking a little bit of faith and trust in us as educators and us doing our jobs as leaders, but I can commit to you that we are.
And this is not new to the school. It may be new to some teachers.
Correct.
Because-
There are lots of
yeah.
teachers that have been using many pieces of,
Sure.
of this one piece of Modern Classroom in terms of asking students to do things outside the classroom, coming into the classroom, demonstrating their learning. That's been happening for many years.
Sure.
This just now it has a label, and it is not the same as a flipped classroom. I know that's been thrown out there. I tried to kind of clarify that in my communication that I sent out to families, how that is different. A flipped classroom asks the student to do everything outside the classroom. That's not what this is. There are resources that are shared with kids outside the classroom, but they have access to those resources all the time. And then when they come into the class, the teacher's developing mini lessons and different types of assessments so the student can continue pushing and learning at their own pace until they master the content.
ask a few questions? So you probably heard through, because I've had many conversations with Tom, I've gotten more complaints about this than I have on anything in a long time. And it's been consistent and like highly, highly concerning. So I don't want to call anyone out or give any identifying information. So I'm being very aware of that. But I guess my question is, how can you evaluate if it's working for every teacher? And if you're seeing signs that it's not working, what happens then?
I think when teachers are not successful with anything, you're going to see students that are disengaged. They're not going to be in the classroom when they should be. They're not going to probably complete their work. And the teacher will be frustrated because teachers want to do a good job. And when they communicate that to us, we have people pushing into the classroom, whether that's me or Ms. Buckley or one of the other assistant principals, and or their department heads who are the instructional experts, in that field. And so we provide coaching and oversight in both evaluative and both formally and informally. So sometimes people need to be able to ask for help and get that coaching without thinking there's going to be some kind of retribution on the other side. And I've played a lot of sports in my life, and I believe in coaching. And so I think that that's the mentality that we take as administrators is if a person is willing to be coached up, we continue to do that. It's very evident when something's not working. And, I know I haven't been here that long, but I feel like we have a good pulse on where our educators are in their journey as educators. We do have a lot of young teachers, and some are very new to the field. And so, and we have older teachers that might be having struggles as well. Not older, I don't mean to say it's
more experienced.
More experienced is a better terminology.
Yeah.
And I also think that there's been some labeling of things as modern classroom that actually is not a modern classroom classes. So, what I would say is I always ask people to come and talk to me about it. And I know that's part of your roles as school committee members, but I want to hear those conversations, and I have had very few people reach out to me.
I know.
And sometimes those that did reach out to me directly, they didn't have correct information, and or I went and addressed it, with the department head and the teacher directly, and were able to provide support and get things back on the right track.
Do you mind if I just follow up on that really quick? I appreciate that answer. I think that's like spot on. And I also share, I worry with some of the generalizations I've heard of that model's not working. Okay, tell me why that model's not working. Because I actually, from the feedback I looked at with Jess, there's a lot of positive feedback from students in classes where they feel like the model is really valuable for their learning. I'd say from teachers and from families that kind of have a counter narrative to that. So I just want to make sure that kind of perspective is shared, that's, from what I've seen, it has been I have seen more positive feedback than I have, and knowing we're across 14 teachers across multiple content areas and things like that. I would also share too, if there's someone says that model's not working, well, what is it about the model? Because I think the model is not, are you doing a model, are you a modern classroom, yes, or are you a modern classroom, no? I would argue a lot of that, they're just good instructional practice, that whether you're not, it's kind of a spectrum of practices. So if you said, stop being a modern classroom, what do you want someone to stop doing? Stop, pulling towards individual, mastery towards standards at more of a self-pace? Okay. Stop having various methods of learning, whether that's peer learning, whether that's small group from a teacher, whether that is text-based. I don't know, it's not as easy as just saying to stop being a modern classroom and switch back to a traditional classroom, because I do think it's a spectrum of practice. With that said, I can assure you, this is when a classroom is struggling, it is a sensitive topic for all of us. And I think I have faith in this team who's up here that they do all of the things that they're getting a lot of feedback from students and families and staff. And when something's not working, they are, one, trying to provide those staff members with supports, whether that is coaching, whether that is evaluative, whether that is from, peers, some sort of support. And I also think if you know this team, there's not only a high level of support, but we know there's a high level of accountability. And I think if you ask the teachers here, they will feel that. So I don't want to be dismissive of the feedback that says that things are not working with the model in certain classrooms. We get that and they're on it. But I also want to be wary of a generalization about the model or about the thing that may not be entirely accurate, because I don't think that's fair to the model, nor do I think that's fair to the classrooms, where this model actually may be getting some positive feedback as well.
Well, and I also want to just say, I emphasize contacting me, but many times if parents contact me about anything, which my door and phone and all of those things are always open, but the first line is they should reach out to the teachers. And many times the teachers have no idea that a parent is upset about something. And I mean, I'm a principal in a school. I still go to my kid's teacher if I have a question. That's step one. And so it's hard to fix something if you're not told that it's not working. And, you know, I have no problem with me being CC'd on things, but I also think that conversation should happen as well, because we are all committed to bringing our very best to students all the time. Nobody's coming in here saying, I'm not going to do a good job today. Everybody's trying really hard. And education's a tough job. And I want people to stay in public education. It's deeply important to me. And so we want to make things better. But I also think we're asking for a certain level of trust, that we are professionals. And, you know, we can hear that feedback, but also it may, was that me?
No.
You know, it may be that sometimes things that we're asking kids to do is pushing them to grow a little bit, which can be a little bit uncomfortable.
Can I just add a few things? So I appreciate all of that. And I want you to know that I always reiterate that. I always reiterate, like, start with the teacher.
Thank you.
If you're not getting what you need from the teacher, go to the department head. If you're not getting what you need from the department head, go to Jess. So I think some of the pushback I've gotten is kids not wanting their parents to rock the boat. So kids coming home and complaining or describing a classroom environment that is very different from how you're describing modern classrooms should look. And then I've also heard, you know, that the surveys are not anonymous, so kids don't all feel comfortable giving feedback to their teacher who is responsible for their grading when it's not an anonymous survey. So that is some of the pushback, you know, because I'm like, they surveyed, the surveys were positive, you know. So I have had a lot of those conversations, but, and I'm not like excusing it, because I was someone who I'm like, look, I'm a school committee member. I still went to teachers when I had concerns, because I think that's like, that partnership is vital. But that's some of what I'm hearing. I'll continue to like repeat it, but.
And I want to say that I do hear that a lot about, like, people don't go to coaches because they're worried about retribution. They don't go to teachers because they're worried. Like, we're in education. Like, people are not seeking retribution on children. And so, I mean, in an ideal world, students would go talk to their teachers themselves, right? That's a life skill that you got to be able to do. Not every kid feels like they can do that. That is actually what I tell and strive to get my own children to do. It's hard, right? And it is okay for parents to reach out to guidance counselors, teachers, administrators. We are not going to take retribution on students. That is not something we're in the business of doing. And if I ever heard something like that was happening, I would do something about it. So I know I'm being a little bit emphatic, but like, that's just, you know, we're in this for the kids.
Yeah. And it's, to be clear, it's not because anyone experienced that.
Yeah.
It's the fear of that, or the kids' fear of that.
I did think that, yes, I get that sometimes, and I do believe the surveys are anonymous, but I will triple check.
Okay. I was told by at least 2 parents.
Okay, I will ask.
Yeah. And then the only other thing, I appreciate what you said about coming back together in March and sort of evaluating, but, you know, the other question I'm getting a lot is like, is this the future of Reading High School? And I'm like, I have no idea. But I think that, you know, I've heard from parents that are like, I wish I knew this was going to be taught differently this year. Maybe I would have chosen a different style, or for the learning style of my child, like things like that. So just something to bear in mind for next year. I do think there's like a learning style this could be great for, and a learning style this could be a lot harder for.
So I think that I've heard that before, and I just want to say that every teacher has different teaching styles, and if we get into the business of saying, this teacher doesn't meet my learning style, then it's going to be really hard for me to schedule kids in classes, right? And like, we do come together in March or April, and during that February during the early release on Friday, and the teachers present what they've learned, or the people that had the professional development tracks. And then you take from that what are best practices. So the answer is no. This isn't something that Reading Memorial High School is transitioning to be a modern classroom project school. It's that we're using the best practices from all of the professional development tracks that we have there to be better at our jobs. And, be better evaluators, be better administrators, be better teachers, et cetera. Because we have to continue to evolve as educators. And so, no, we're not transitioning the entire school into something else, but we are going to take what works. And it may be that it works with 11th and 12th graders, and it doesn't work with 9th and 10th, or it works in certain subject areas and not others. Or maybe there's certain teachers that say, I really like this piece of it, and I'm gonna use that. And like Ms. Mazzaro said, we have been doing elements of this for a very long time, because it's essentially a student-centered classroom, which is really what we should be doing. Is student-centered.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Also, we want to inspire young adults to go off into their education or wherever they are going next and be able to learn from all different kinds of experiences and different ways that different people, whether it's a boss or a professor or whatever's next for them, we want them to be able to be successful in that learning environment. So this is just another flavor of learning. And it's not really that different than a regular classroom anyway.
Yeah, I hear that for when it's going well.
Let's move on to
Yeah.
that.
We understand.
So I think you've already had a chance. I'm going to go to Sarah real quick, then we'll come back to Carl.
Yeah, mine's really quick, and I think this will actually get into the budget conversation too, but one of the things that's kind of jumped out to me about some of these things we're piloting and trying is that it requires a higher level of executive functioning from our kiddos to navigate these different environments, and a huge budget priority for having more. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think in terms of supporting them to navigate those different things, and what are the tools that we can put in place for them to help them become better learners, so that when you do go to college and it's Wild West of who your professor is, that you can advocate for what you need to access the material.
Good point.
Carla. Yeah, I said you, then we'll go to Chuck.
Go ahead,
Are we into the question part now? or-
Jess is still going to go through a little bit of example.
Oh, yeah, we'll go to that. I'll wait. I'll have some.
I'll be
Go ahead,
fast.
Carla.
ahead.
No, go ahead, Carla. I'm sorry.
Topic or point on this topic?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll catch you at
before,
the end.
Then I want to finish it real quick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to talk through it. Thank you for answering the challenging questions. Thank you for, putting out new ideas and new ways of approaching things, right? I'm thinking about this, tying it back to goals, right? Some of this is new pedagogy, as you mentioned. Some of it has some scientific background and research behind how well it works or doesn't. I think your letter out to the community, in fact, showed some of that. How do we then, again, bringing back to March and April, say this worked and this doesn't, how does it go into the library? Right? So we have to tie it back together with the overall goals of the district and the superintendent as well, and part of it is trial, right? I think back to some of the stuff that we've heard from the elementaries, and to your point, Jess, about some of the small group learning that's going on at Barrows, or was going on at Barrows and is still going on at Josh Wheaton. How do we think about some of those things and expand them more where they work and contract them when they don't? But we have to give a chance for trial and error to continually get better, right? We don't want to stay the same. We know the same status quo is not good enough. We still want to keep raising the bar, and part of that is going through in professional development, different ways of teaching, et cetera. So while it probably was painful at times putting yourself out there and having the teachers put themselves out there, I just want to say thank you for taking the chances. It's not easy to do.
Thank you.
So now it's back to you, Jess.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. These are just examples so that you know that we aren't making up the things that we're doing, that they are tied to anchor texts or different online theoretical resources, so it's not made up. Okay. So my example, which is the next one, you can go to the next one, Tom, is that Mr. McSweeney and I last year did our professional development track was using the text Deeper Learning, which is it's a weighty book, to tie together instructional rounds. So it was the first time teachers had participated in larger scale instructional rounds, which means like pairs of teachers. I was the matrix person, so I came up with the schedule and figured out when they could push into different classes and gave them relief of duties to be able to do that. And then if you flip to the next one, I think, yes. And so when they went into classrooms, the teachers in my professional development track were looking under 3 windows, right? And so the theory is in the Deeper Learning text is that if students are demonstrating creativity, having identity to the work that they're doing, or it's tied to their identity, and they're mastering content, and this is no overlap with Modern Classroom, this is separate, that is where deeper learning happens, right? And so it was very interesting to see the teachers pushing into classrooms and then using the tool that we developed to collect feedback and then rate what they saw. And sometimes the rating was, I didn't see it, right? Like, and I pushed them to say, don't just go in the beginning of the class, go in the middle, go in the end, which is something I do as an evaluator to see different segments of what's happening during that observation. And then we came back together multiple times throughout the year and tallied the information to see if there were patterns, of where we see creativity, but we weren't seeing mastery, et cetera. Wasn't it happening in some departments and not others? And so I think if you flip to the next slide, Mr. Wise, can you go one more? I'll come back to this one. Some of the feedback that we, at the end, so how do we learn from this was one of your questions. We did a survey. I also took numeric data, and then that was all submitted to Dr. Hardy about our professional development track. But one of the quotes from the teachers was, I appreciated the book for thinking about classes we observed. Having those 3 components as pillars has been helpful as I think about lesson plans for my own lessons, right? And so it was really pushing the teachers to grow and to think deeply about how they were designing their lessons and making them much more meaningful for students, and learning more authentically. And it is really a different lens when you go in and observe it someone teaching. It really flips your thinking, and teachers don't really get an opportunity to see other people teaching a lot of times. And so this was an example of a professional development track that I feel was very successful. I would love to continue it, but like I said, I just was like, I don't think I can redo this again. And I've done instructional rounds in a lot of schools prior to this, but linking it with the text as well just made it that much more robust. Can you go back one slide, Mr. Wise? And so at the end of the year, I do an end of year survey, and I ask many questions in that survey, and this is kind of how I measure if we've met our goals or not, are they aligning with the district goals, et cetera. But one of the questions to the staff was, how'd you like your PD track, right? Like, how did it go? And 75% essentially said, I like what we were doing, right? That is actually a very emphatic celebration for professional development, because a lot of times when we talk about professional learning and professional development in schools that are run by our own staff, there's some groans. And so this I felt like was very positive, mainly because I think people had choice in what they were doing, but that choice was done strategically to align with our goals as a school and the goals of the district as well.
Jess, can I add on one thing? If you go back 2 slides.
2 slides?
Quick. And I'm going to ask a question. I'll put the committee on the spot in a second on this too. Just the one with the, next one. Actually, the one forward. So, yeah, here we go. So has anyone read this text? So it's the deeper learning text. It's like the subtitle is about like remaking the high school or reimagining the high school experience. And the 2 authors toured, hundreds of classrooms across the country looking for the best instruction. And their goal was to then say, what are the best practices that are consistent across all these amazing classrooms? And then let's try to put that in practice and scale that up, right? It was interesting. The researchers found sort of one particular, I would say content area or group of classes where they said students came to life. Does anyone want to guess when that was? Where they saw the best instruction, where students really came to life. Anyone want to guess?
Student-led.
Student-led.
You were going to say modern classroom, or
No.
That would be awesome.
Subject matter.
It's a subject matter, sort of. It was extracurricular activities. It says the students are like this, they give the very dramatic intro where students are like this during the day, and all of a sudden the bell rings at 3:05, kids come to life. And they actually said the time where they saw the best instruction was in arts programs, in athletics, where they combine sort of these three pieces of mastery, which is like students have to work towards a particular skill. There has to be something. In schools, it's towards standards, but it has to be tightly aligned to what they're doing there. It has to tie to something they feel personally invested in that connects to who they are and where they want to go. And it has to give them some creativity in their learning to be able to feel like they have some ownership of their learning. So I would encourage you, if you haven't, to dive into the text. It's long, but it does, I think, go deep into like each of those three categories, which I think are pieces that we would all agree are really like good pieces of instruction. And I just wanted to say, to like echo what Jess has shared, is I commend the high school for saying, we're going to ground learning in a text that's going to, we think, is around what good instruction looks like. We're then going to take it a step further and calibrate on what that looks like in practice and hold each other accountable on that. And then also process-wise is the benefit of building that like shared culture and that shared community too. I just think that's really powerful and like how that was designed to. I think since I only gave you 20 minutes, you like moved through this part, which I think is like there's like,
20 minutes.
What's that?
We're well past 20
How
minutes.
we are, but I told Jess to go quick, but I'm just going. But I just want to emphasize, I think that there was like really good quality learning in what was I think a really good anchor text, and pushing and integrating that into practice. I just think it was a really thoughtful way to do that and to make it actually in a way that teachers can digest it and use it too. So I think it's a good example at UTES.
And that was our dilemma. How do we make our classes, especially those that every child has to take, like extracurriculars? It's a challenge. And it's not an elective, right? Or something that the child, outside of English 9, English
Actually
10.
wants to do.
Right. It's that is the dilemma of that text.
I want to be a better basketball player, so I'm going to learn in the drill how to like focus and how to put my hand, how to do X, Y, Z. But if I don't see the connection towards being better in algebra, why am I going to focus? So it's that teacher's job to build that same connection for that student's identity, and that's a challenge. Sorry, we could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, we probably can.
Yeah.
Can I just,
Go ahead, before I can jump in.
I think I'm done.
For me, when I first saw this presentation, the thing that stuck out with me that made me really happy was the involvement of the department heads, right? The true involvement of the department heads in the curriculum, in, the evaluation process in the curriculum. You took our thought of, we want the department heads to be more involved, and you blossomed it. The thing that I like even more is the teachers being the fundamental, learners, being able to be creative in how they roll out material. And then I always go back to where we were 6 years ago, and my reasons for getting on the school committee, and probably a lot of our reasons for getting on the school committee, and the environment that we had in this building particularly. And we are from night to day of where we're at. And to have the leadership team that goes out and is trying to pull all the stuff from the teachers, and the teachers being excited about this, it is like, to me, it's just like, I could just like walk away and just say, this is like perfect. So for me, with this stuff, it may not be perfect, but how you have it set up, it just, I think it's fabulous.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I also have to commend my team
Yep.
that I work with, as well as an amazing staff. They
Yep.
really are. And they keep things moving forward, and I'm happy to be in the position that I am. They make my job easy, and I appreciate your support, and obviously the district staff support as well, in trying some of these creative ideas that we're doing.
It's awesome.
And we just want to bring the best to the kids.
Sure.
So I don't have any questions to get down into the weeds of stuff, but I really do appreciate this presentation because you know, as it's kind of timely too, as we head into the budget, we see professional development all over the budget. The community has never seen this and really knows what it is. I think this is very timely and important that there's something behind that. That's a significant amount of the budget. It gets talked about in collective bargaining a lot. And I really appreciated this presentation because it put context behind the numbers, really. You know.
Well, and I appreciate the opportunity because we put a lot of work into this and I think it's really good work. And nothing is perfection, but I think it's excellent. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight and explain what we're doing. And we are always open to feedback to be better.
Anything else? Sean, anything on your side?
I want to commend them one real quick.
I'm good, thank you.
I just want to thank the team, to commend them to that it is a true skill to be able to lead, like, have focus on instructional leadership in a high school where you're managing a city every day in, day out. It's hard enough just to manage the operational side of the work, but to focus in truly the ways that they are on leading and demonstrating strong instructional leadership is a true skill and a testament to you and your team. So I just say thank you for that work, which is critically important, and don't want to underestimate people in the community to know that job. No one said your job is easy. I can't imagine a more difficult job, and appreciate this focus because it's what our school needs.
I'll end as well with a thank you, but also with a caution. And I want to figure out how to word this properly, but if you were to step back in time, maybe 15 years ago, about what the best practices were, and the books that were out there about how to do those, there was absolutely zero research base behind them, and they harmed a lot of our kids. So as we think about this and as we look at some of these things, I want to make sure, and ask that you do, and it sounds like there's a significant review process, so that wouldn't be, hopefully not a problem on a go-forward basis, but as we anchor in texts, let's make sure those texts have good, strong research back behind them. Not just, hey, this is my best idea in the last 2 days, right? I know that's not what you're doing, but I just want to caution that we continue to think about the research base behind what we're putting out there, and not just putting out like anything. Right? So I appreciate the diligence, the thoroughness with which you guys continue to work through this. But again, just make sure we don't fall astray as many in the industry did 15 or so years ago.
I was only 15 then.
Kindergarten.
You and me both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Was Adam here 6 years ago?
And we will move on to the next topic in our agenda, which is our financial update. So,
Can we go, you want to go back to share for the
sure, I can go back.
5 slides?
Yeah. I was just being the
No.
All right.
Why are the lights so?
Because they just went out.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
So I think you're going to see from these slides that I could probably benefit from some professional development on having more exciting looking presentations. So what we have is 5 slides for the Q1 financial report. It's pretty much in line with what you were seeing last year and I think the last couple of years. One of the things I'm going to be doing over the course of the year is looking at these reports and perhaps making some changes, modifying them. I'm open to feedback from you folks if there are things you're looking for that aren't there. And when you get to the 3rd slide, which is the revolving accounts, I've already made some changes for that one. And hopefully it's a little more useful, providing some more useful information to folks. And of course, the Q1 update is always the most boring one because, you know, school just started through September. You only have 1 month of the salaries for the teachers in there. Right now, and I'll talk to where we are right now in December, we're tracking fine in terms of the general fund budget. Everything's pretty much running in line. We will be encumbering the salaries. Kate has done a whole lot of work since I got here in terms of reconciling current staffing back to the budget staffing. And I've been doing it as well to help me understand how this year's budget was created and what's behind it. So we're going to be making some budget transfers to get things to line up so that when we're done, we'll know that what's in those lines for salaries is what we need for the rest of the year. And then if there's any savings in terms of salary savings, we'll be able to identify what those numbers are as well. So it's a lot of work. Luckily, again, Kate's been doing a lot of that work, and I've just been bugging the heck out of her with all my questions on it and everything else. So again, in terms of the general fund, things are tracking fine. The next one, which is the grants one, it took me a few minutes to actually try to understand what this thing was trying to tell me. Now that I understand it, it's just showing us in terms of grants from prior years, if there's any money left, it's being used up. And we've got the fiscal year 25 grants out there as well. Just as a reminder to folks that in terms of the entitlement grants, those actually have a life of 27 months from the time they're out there. So we are allowed to, I hate to use this term, but carry over funds from year to year if we don't use it all up. So typically, the IDA grant, sometimes, since that's our biggest one, we do have the ability to not use up the complete allotment of the current year and carry some of that into the next year. So, but again, in terms of the grants, Esther's gone. Those words will never pass my lips again. So we're all done with those, and we're just back to where we are. I am very impressed since I've been here in terms of the number of grants that the staff has gone out to do their applications to try to get them. There's a lot of those grants floating around, so again, I commend the staff for doing that. All right, for the third one, which is the next one, which is the one I've done some work on, which is the revolving accounts. I started here because revolving accounts, to me, they are our business line, so to speak, because most of these are self-funding operations. We want to make sure that we have enough revenue to offset the planned expenses. So the first four columns are the same. It's just showing what the beginning balance was at the beginning of the fiscal year, and how much we brought in actual in revenue, how much we've actually spent, and what the balance is in the Q1. The difference is the next four columns. What Kate and I have tried to do is to project out the full year plan for all of these lines, so we can get a sense as to where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year. I've spent some time meeting with the folks from the extended day programs to go over what their plan is for this year. If you look at the extended day, because of COVID and everything else, fiscal year 24 in terms of revenue, it's just finally getting back to where we were in fiscal year 19 in terms of utilization of the programs. They've got some great plans for this year, some new programs that they're going to try out. They're anticipating another increase in revenue, but we're going to keep a close eye on that just to make sure that that revenue actually does come to fruition. And if it doesn't, we've already had conversations with them as to what changes we might need to make to their expense side to make sure that we keep that in line. I've also had several conversations with Catherine in terms of the food service program. Food service program is doing extremely well. Participation rate is, relatively speaking, doing well. She'd like to get it up higher. One of the operational things that we're running into at the high school, because the kids get, 3.5 minutes for lunch these days? We're trying to increase the throughput on the lunch lines. So we're probably going to go out and buy a 5th register. And we're also looking at using their ID badges, rather than having to put in their 4-digit code to pay for the lunch, so to speak, just be able to scan the barcode on their ID badges, speed things up. So we're going to try to do a pilot of that after the first of the year, and operationally, hopefully that will get the kids through faster, because a lot of the high school, there are some high school kids who just won't get lunch because the lines are too long. So we're recognizing the operational issue, so we're taking a look at that. Just a couple other things. Full care kindergarten, as we all know, this is the last year that we're charging a tuition for that. Where we expect to be at the end of the year is what was in the plan, so that there will be, just under 500,000 left to be used up for fiscal year 26 or 27. So that's pretty much on plan. And just the last one that I'm going to look at next is athletics. I'm trying to wrap my head around that one, and we'll see where we are. The rest of them, overall, we're looking pretty good. But again, these are ones that I like to keep an eye on again, because you can't have a negative balance in these accounts at the end of the year, because if you do, then you've got to get money out of the operating account to pay for it, and we don't want to be there. So we'll be keeping a close watch on that. And then the last two are just the gift and donation accounts and the student activity accounts, there's nothing really much there to talk about with those. So, I mean, that's all I've got for the Q1. There's no written memo, because I hate writing memos. But I am going to try to, again, make some changes to these, see if I can get ways to give some more information. And I also prefer graphs as opposed to numbers, because I think people understand pictures better rather than looking at the numbers. So I'll be doing some experimentation, I think, during the course of this year to see if we can get something that, gives a little more useful information, at least what I think is useful information. But I'm certainly not going to say that what I think is useful is what you folks may find useful. So any feedback, I would certainly be appreciative of that.
Any thoughts, anybody?
Sounds great.
Sean, anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Hold on, Dr. Corum. I'll say I appreciate what you're doing here with the revolving accounts. And the addition here in terms of actual revenue, actual expenditure, forecast revenue expenditure. And I also very much appreciate the extended day program deep dive and understanding, because I had a pretty big concern there that we'd be in bad shape. So thank you for that. One thing I would ask you to think about is actual collection history, right?
Interesting you should bring that up, because one of the things that we talked about when I met with Chris and Mackenzie from the extended day was I actually went in and said, and I did a comparison between where you should have been in terms of collection and where they were, and there was a lag. And the response that I got was that the parents who had signed up to have automatic debits taken out, that part of the software program was not working. So they were behind in terms of their collections. That's something I'm going to keep an eye on, when I look at to make sure that the revenue is tracking in line with where we expect it to be. Based on what people have signed up for, the revenue is expected to be around 2 million. So I want to make sure that that's correct. And if I continue to see that the collection is dragging, then I'm going to have another conversation to say, we need to see what's going on to make sure that we keep the programs, from not going negative for the year. But,
Yeah, and if the software is not working and the parents aren't seeing that withdrawal happen, the parents don't know necessarily.
Don't know, yeah.
So what do we do to communicate that gap? I would also add as well, we've seen collection issues with some of the other accounts. Use of school property would be one I would look at as well, historically. I used to be a coach in this town, used to use the school property, used to register for it, used to never get billed. So it may not be the case anymore, but let's look at some of those things as well to make sure that's the case, especially as we might be charging more for certain fields and things like that in the future. That we have a really good tightened up collection procedure. We have the same type of issue that we had with extended day with kindergarten. It's not going to be an issue going forward next year.
Yep.
And we're not going to exclude a kid from kindergarten, but if they can't pay or if there won't be payments, then we need to make sure that we understand if there's some other paperwork that should be filed appropriately. And things like that.
We've had a couple conversations about that. So far this year, the collection on the kindergarten seems to be running better than it has in the past.
Because they can pay it all in one lump sum because it's so
Correct.
small, is what we've heard, but it's still, let's just make sure we monitor actual versus expected.
Athletics as well.
Athletics would be another one that you're going to see a rather large flow on a regular, athletics and extracurricular / band activities at the high school or wherever that one goes. Okay. Dr. Parham, you had a question?
Jeffrey Quorum, Ridge Road. If you actually go back to the revolving accounts, that one, I think it's kind of a traditional comment of mine that the extracurricular Parker and extracurricular Coolidge show no activity. And I think it's been 5, maybe 10 years since there's been any activity in those years. So in those two accounts, and I just sort of, wonder what they're doing and why they're sitting there. I'm also a little curious. I see there's an after-school activities Parker, but not one for Coolidge. So I wonder, why not? And these are, things you can look into, and obviously those have been sitting there for a number of years. It's not a huge amount of money, but, kind of scratch my head every year, ask, and somebody says, okay, well, look into it, and then, other things take priority. If you go forward, the student activities account, the other thing that came up at a similar budget overview one time was the student activities accounts, particularly for the graduating classes, where they had some class funds that had been allocated, and there was a question as to who actually had authority to spend those accounts. And I think we were hunting down some, like the class president from 4 years ago or something for some of these accounts to try and make sure that the accounts could be spent in a way that the students had asked for it to be, had intended for it to be spent back right before they graduated. So just a couple of things to keep an eye on as you delve in and learn the ins and outs of the budgets here. Thanks.
Is there a school committee policy in terms of what happens to class funds after graduation?
There isn't a policy that we have. When Susan was looking through this last, she was going to come up with a set of updated procedures about how to handle them appropriately. I think the overall understanding that we had from some of those conversations, and anybody else jump in and correct me, was that upon graduation, it should go to an account owned by the class officers for future celebrations of reunions and stuff like that. Right?
That is the way it should work. And up in Newburyport, which is why I asked the question, the school committee policy is very clear, is that it's 90 days after graduation, then the money is taken and put into an account that's under the name of class of 2025, and the signers on that account would be whoever were the class officers at time of graduation. Because at that point, that money is no longer the responsibility of the school department.
Yeah, I think the challenge we had was who has that account on a go-forward basis? Which bank does it go to? Because it's not going to be the town. It's going to have to be distributed by the town to some account somewhere. Yep. Making sure, and I think that's where we go back to the procedure. So, Tom, you may know where they are, but we should double check with them, and then Phil, get yourself comfortable with them. And if we need to, bring it up from a policy perspective. We have plenty of policies to review. We can just add one more to the list, right?
Sure, next time we meet.
Yeah, next time we get something done, yeah. Okay, thanks, Phil. Anything else?
No.
Anybody else?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, so the last topic on our agenda is FY26 school committee budget priorities discussion. Just to set, and Dr. Milczewski, I'll let you set things up as well. We started this process, 2 years ago now? Susan brought it in as a process to say, hey, what do you want us to focus on as we go through this? It's really kind of been more ad hoc, and I'm fine with it being ad hoc too. I'll probably time box it to about 10 minutes. I think we're probably all going to say the same thing anyway, or something very similar with some slight adjustments. I had ideas about sticky notes and rankings and all that stuff, and I'm not going to worry about that right now. So, really just kind of thinking about, other than the basics of, it's going to be more or less a level funded budget going into next year, with where we are, where the town is, and things like that. How do you want to think about other allocations, and how do we want to prioritize them? So, Tom, do you want to introduce anything else, or is that good?
I think you did a good job.
Okay. So any feedback or thoughts? I think, Sarah, you started campaigning a little bit in one of the previous topics, so we'll go ahead and let you add a topic.
So if and when we find some funny money in our budgets here, I have a couple of things that I think could be, if we have smaller buckets of money that we could try. And so I think building on the Metco grant you spoke about earlier, Tom, and the summer reading presentation that Sarah Hardy did, I think what other high-risk groups where we're seeing big learning gaps, so MLL, economically disadvantaged, IEP, what else are we doing for those groups to close gaps, like we're going to be doing and piloting with the Metco grants? That'd be one. Continuing program evaluations that we've been doing for special ed, the Learning Center reading instruction really needs to be evaluated. That was something that was proposed that we would do as part of the lead evaluation, but didn't happen. So I'd like to see that. And then I think the executive functioning instruction tools support more explicit, structured instruction at different building levels to support different students across all students. And then the big one I'll throw out there that I think we just need to start talking about, not for next year, but we need to start figuring out, similar to full day K, busing. There's a growing need for busing in the community. What does that look like? Do we have interest in figuring out how to fund that, over what time frame? And then I think more importantly, potentially upgrading the HVAC and systems to get climate control into the buildings. At some point in time, that's going to be a reality. We're losing time on learning already related to global warming and heat in the buildings. We're going to have to figure it out. So just putting it out there, we have to start thinking about similar to full day K. It's not going to be next year, but
I just have a when you said busing, were you talking about kindergarten or busing?
in general, busing, town busing.
Okay. Anybody else have
Yes, ma'am.
anything they want to add or any things to pile on to Sarah's list? Or seconds, as the case may be? Chuck, go ahead.
I mean, I don't have anything I want to add, but I'd like, maybe Phil, and you're probably already doing it, and with all your experience, just having a fresh set of eyes on where there may be inefficiencies, where you did something differently.
I'm still looking for the magic pocket money.
Well, and there may
That's
not,
not your
and it may not be, I'm not suggesting but I think it's, I think that we should utilize your experience to take a look at that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Carl, Aaron?
I guess I'm just aware that we reached collective bargaining with all our units. I'm like wary of even like I have lots of ideas. I know there's a lot we've talked about, but I feel like we're lucky if we can, have a level service budget going forward. So I'm not thinking a lot bigger because I think it's going to take more. And we're only probably a year out from needing to plan, hopefully, around a new school building, which may require some changes or additions. So I'm also sort of aware of that being on the horizon. So not the next budget, but certainly the budget after that, we'll be talking about it. So that's sort of in my mind. The only other thing I'll say is I think we did see a clear impact from adding the math coaches. So again, I know there's not room to add anything, but if there were, that is certainly something I would look at, whether there's room to expand that, and then down the line, ELA coaches.
Carl, anything?
Guys covered them.
Sean, you have anything?
Yeah, I'll support Aaron's point about the math coaches, for sure. Sarah's point about cooling systems, I think, is a very legitimate one. I don't think it's an operating budget question. I think we need to start sort of figuring out how to do the homework to see what that would look like and start thinking about it as a capital planning item, at some point in time. So definitely agree with that one. I know it's kind of a given, but I just want to say it out loud. Making sure we take that final step to full day kindergarten, is an absolute must from my perspective to be in the budget for next year. And the only other thing that's on my mind is, I think we've seen a little bit of an uptick in sort of dysregulated behavior in in the youngest cohorts in the school system. And so we need to think about, how we provide additional support for those kids, what that looks like, whether it's programmatic or, increasing para ratios or whatever that might be, to support those kids in particular. They were, 1-2 years old at the onset of COVID, so I think we're seeing the impact of that sort of, delayed socialization or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's one other place that we need to be really thoughtful and probably figure out if there's a way to squeeze in some additional support.
Okay. I'll add a couple of echoes and then a couple of other things to think about. And I know Aaron's point about being level funded, I think, is a key one. So it is what it is. We can do what we can do. But from my perspective, I think one of the most important things we can figure out how to do is related to gap closing stuff that Sarah was talking about, right? And the earlier, the better, because we can talk about improving access to high classes, AP classes, et cetera, at the high school all we want, but if our kids aren't ready for them because they can't read or they can't do math, then we've wasted our time, right? So what can we do to further augment and support those that are struggling or not meeting and exceeding the expectations, right? Partially meeting isn't good enough. So if you're not meeting and exceeding, what are we doing with any kid, no matter what their background or profile is? Maybe that's expanded testing and suggestions on testing to see if there's anything else we need to support that child and that family with. Maybe it's some of the dysregulation stuff that Sean's talking about. Maybe it's coaching from a math or literacy perspective that we should be talking about. Let's look at the science and figure out what the science tells us is the best way to close gaps and figure out how we can fund those appropriately. We've done that with some of these other solutions already, and we can and should continue to do that in other places. The other one that I'm surprised nobody said, and I don't know if people are trying to avoid jumping on a landmine, and here I go, is for half-day Fridays, right? We need to start figuring out the plan for that, because time on learning at the elementary school does and will impact their ability to grow, and the time on learning in middle school and whatnot. For me, that's far more important than busing or AC, as much as I'd love my kids to be in a temperature-controlled building. I think there are challenges we're going to face when we talk about that from a capital perspective, where some of these buildings, if we start putting AC in them appropriately, might trigger other problems that we need to be aware of, right? So just as we couldn't do any real work at Killen without knocking the whole thing down and causing a major capital issue, many of our other buildings are old enough that this could be a problem there too. So I want to, eyes wide open, that's not an easy solution necessarily. And
It's not a cheap solution.
It's not a cheap solution in any way, shape, or form. So I want to be cautious about that. But what we can do is provide more time on learning. And we know that number, approximately, we had a number that we put in our head. So how does that look? But of course, we can't roll that out without further conversations and discussions with other people.
Right.
But we need to start some of those sooner than later. And it may not be 26, but it may be 27. And the sooner we have those conversations, if we still agree that it is necessary from a time on learning perspective, then we should move some of those topics forward at some point soon.
I'm going to piggyback on you.
Go ahead.
In terms of getting instruments, languages into elementary schools as well.
So that's tied to time, it's tied to
Yeah,
half-day Fridays.
exactly.
So all the other opportunities that half-day Fridays open up.
And even seeing if we can have more language options, getting Latin into the middle schools, like that.
But I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You're not talking about the budget we're going into now necessarily, right?
Well, I think when, I have had a bit of a preview when we were doing some of the stuff preparing for FinCom, right? So I don't think there's a ton of extra space right now. But I do think that we should be starting some of the conversations, because laying the groundwork is not something that happens in 2 months or 3 months anyway, right? And we know through other conversations that this is not a slam dunk issue necessarily.
Oh, it requires other people to weigh in.
Well, it definitely does. There's enough flexibility that we have given ourselves, but at the same time, we don't just mandate, we don't execute by mandate. It's a collaborative organization, and that's on purpose, right? So I think it is something we should start talking about, and maybe as we go through next year, and if we have enough things, maybe there's a trial month next year. I don't know, I'm just throwing something out, right? Maybe it's not the whole year. Maybe there's a trial month in May of next year or something like that, that we know, hey, that's a small enough money thing, and we can see, does this actually work? And what's the impact? And I don't know, I'm just trying to be a little bit creative in that and seeing how it might tie into things in the future state as well. Okay?
We got to be really careful about that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the same situation when the schedule changes happen, right?
It's a
It
big
impacted, it impacted the Y, and it impacted when kids were going to work to other places in town. You're impacting parents' work schedules and babysitting and where kids are going
Which is why it's a
after.
multi-constituent thing.
Exactly.
Which is why it takes a collaborative approach,
discussion.
which is why we need to start it rather than not, just ignore it, So, Aaron, were you going to add to that, or?
No, not right now. It's a can of worms, so I'm not.
Okay, so I did jump on the landmine, but that's okay. All right, anything else? Tom,
Just
Bill?
really appreciate these conversations. I think, Chuck, your point about looking for efficiency, inefficiencies too, but also maybe things we do pull back on is sometimes just important as what you're going to add. Also appreciate these conversations and elevating priorities for us. Even I know for some of them, like elementary assistant principals, Chuck, you had said had been elevated for decades, but continued on those and eventually they come to fruition. So whether these are this budget cycle or the next, it's really good to continue to have these conversations. So thank you.
We should look back on our list that we made.
Get ready for the ride, Phil.
Well, the list did include coaches, the list did include additional Metco staff, the list did include full-day K, the list did include elementary assistant principals, the list did include elementary counselors, the list, I went through that list today, and there was a lot of things that, even before my time, where there was, things that have been on the table for a while, and a lot of those have
And
come.
there's a lot, and by the way, to get all of that into a level service budget is still, that's have a level service budget is not any small event.
No.
There's been many years where it hasn't been.
Yeah, and, as we look forward, there might be 3 or 4 years out that we're not going to be in that position. So we have to be cautious about that too. So anything we put in, we have to make sure we can maintain it. All right, with that said, we'll close that topic, and I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Nope.
Oh, motion to adjourn to executive session and not return.
Second.
To executive session for the purposes of
Sorry, my
No
printer
problem.
didn't
Finish the
print.
job.
conduct strategy in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, where the chair says that open conversation will be detrimental to those negotiations.
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. So moved. We're gonna roll call vote. Chuck?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
You got my note?
I did.
Okay. Tom? Yes. We're adjourned. We'll meet in the room shortly.
Sorry, page 2.